All right, welcome to part 6. I apologize it's taken so long to get to this chapter. Um, this one's just a little bit more difficult to minimize from its original chapter because there's a lot of stuff that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm sharing. But in order to talk about the parts that I'm sharing, I need to talk about those things a little bit. So let's get into it. Months after what happened in part 5, I met someone. We got pretty serious pretty quickly, and one morning around 7 a.m., I was woken up by the feeling that someone was standing in my room. My new boyfriend, we'll just call him M, was asleep beside me. He had spent the night before, and before I even opened my eyes, I knew it was my ex standing there. I could feel his presence. My heart was pounding. I was terrified. Did I forget to lock the deadbolt downstairs? I was always very careful to lock it, knowing that he had broken my door previously and all he needed to do was push it open. So when I gained enough courage, I opened my eyes. He didn't say a word. He stood in the doorway just watching us sleep. He just nodded his head towards the kitchen, and I quietly got out of bed, being careful not to wake my child. I thought the worst and didn't want my child to hear anything that might happen. He sat down in a chair and began asking me questions like, "So that's who you're with now? He's the one you've been seeing?" His demeanor was calm but tense. Once his voice started to rise, M came out of the bedroom and asked if everything was okay. My ex was like, "Yeah, yeah, everything is good." Then he asked M if we were together, and M told him that we were. He responded with something along the lines of, "Oh, okay, okay, rather it be you than someone else." Apparently, they knew each other, but I didn't know that until that moment. Surprisingly, though, things went way differently than I expected. My ex began coming over every day whenever M was there. At this point, I was working at a hotel up the street from midnight to 8 a.m., and the two of them would stay at my place watching the baby while I worked. The dynamic was new and other people didn't quite get it, but I didn't care. My son had people around him that loved him, and everyone was getting along. What could possibly go wrong? A couple of weeks before my son's first birthday, I moved out and into my first real apartment. I had just turned 18, and it just so happened to be that the apartment was right around the corner from where M lived. That wasn't on purpose, it was just the apartment that was available when I applied. I'm really not sure what changed after that move, but my ex started coming around a lot less when M was around and more when he wasn't. I don't know what triggered the events that follow, but one night, me, Em, and my son were sitting in my car in front of my building eating some McDonald's after coming back from the mall when suddenly my ex was banging on my driver's side window yelling at me. I don't remember what he was mad about. I just remember him calling me names and telling me to open the door. When I refused, he hit my window so hard that he shattered the glass. Glass flew into M's food in the passenger seat. It was in my baby's lap in the back in the car seat. It was all over me and had cut my face. When M saw me bleeding and the glass in the baby's lap, he lost it. He was livid. My ex took off running and M went after him. I tried to calm M down and begged him to just leave it alone. He's my son's father. Please just let it go. I remember him being so upset with me for what he said was allowing that man to treat me that way and that it was wrong and that he didn't want him coming around anymore because he had zero regard for the fact that his child was in the back seat when he decided to break that glass. There was no big happy family after that. A few weeks later, something happened and M was picked up. He was gone for a while. During that time, we talked once a day and sent letters multiple times a week. But with him being gone, my ex took advantage of that and started coming around again. He went back to trying to control everything I did, everywhere I went. I'd wake up some mornings, he'd be sleeping in my bed. No matter how many times I said I didn't want him there, people staying with me would let him in after I went to sleep. I was naive, to say the least, about the people I had in my life at that time. In the midst of all of this, my car had broken down and I lost my job. The car had broken down on my way to work one night, and since I had moved, I no longer lived just down the street. For a time, I did make the long walk late at night until I ended up with a stalker harassing me late at night when I was alone at the hotel. It was getting really out of hand and scary, so eventually I quit. I got behind in my rent and eventually was evicted. The night before we had to be out, I was cleaning and packing with the help of some friends. At one point, I left the baby with his aunt and I ran to the 24-hour store down the street. While I was gone, my ex showed up to my apartment and they told him I had just run to the store real quick. And instead of him just staying there and visiting with his child, he came looking for me. I was checking out as he walked into the store. He started rushing me out, and I got mad and told him to fuck off, to leave me alone, to stop following me around. That got him really mad, and so he berated me the entire walk back, pushing me from behind every few steps. I'd fall, get back up, take a few more steps, he'd push me again, and that's how it went the entire walk home. When we got to the front of my building, people must have heard the commotion because now people were coming outside, looking out the windows, and at this point, he had wrapped my hair around his hand and was twisting it so hard that I fell to my knees. He's standing over me, calling me names, and he slaps me so hard across the face that he busts my lip again, bruises my cheek. Someone must have called the police because they showed up just as I was getting up off the ground. He was arrested that night for assaulting me. And the funny thing is that the friends who were helping me pack suddenly were mad at me for him being arrested after he hit me. He certainly had a way with ladies, that's for sure. I remember calling my dad in the middle of the night hysterical and him hanging up on me. We weren't really talking at this time and he wasn't very happy with me, and I don't blame him. I wasn't really making the best choices at the time. The next day, I was left to clean and pack up everything alone. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't know what to do with my things. I didn't have a car anymore. So, in my desperation, I called the only person I could, my ex. And to his credit, even though he was arrested the night before for hitting me, he showed up within minutes of the call. He helped me pack what we could, and my best friend let me put some things in her basement. My ex and I walked around all day trying to figure out where I could stay with the baby. An old friend from school who lived across the street from our old place let us stay there for a short time. But during that time, someone called DCF and told them I was homeless with a child. And at this point, the decision had already been made that I would be going to stay with my mother in Oklahoma. I had not seen my mother in years and really didn't know her. DCF confirmed the plane tickets existed, but they were very clear that if I didn't get on that plane, they'd be taking my child. When I got to Oklahoma, I wrote Em a letter explaining what happened and that I was in Oklahoma. Unfortunately, I wasn't there long enough to receive a response letter because things went left within a couple weeks and I needed to come back to Mass. My father agreed and got me and my child a flight back, but I still had nowhere to go. On the day I flew back in, my father picked me up at the airport with my ex. In all fairness, my dad didn't know I was seeing someone else. He didn't know about the broken window. He didn't know about the arrest. He just didn't know. I imagine his thoughts were that he was the father of my child, and therefore it was his responsibility to take care of us. He got us a hotel room for the weekend and said after checkout we had to figure things out on our own, and we did. We found a cheaper hotel with weekly rates, about $210 a week, but he was only bringing in $270 a week from work. And I was terrified about DCF finding out that I was back in Mass, so I couldn't apply for assistance until we got an apartment. It was a serious struggle. 7-Eleven used to have a deal where you could get 2 hot dogs, a bag of chips, and a soda for like $2.10. Him and I would share a hot dog, and the baby would get the other one to himself with the chips. We'd share the drink. We made sure our child ate, even if we didn't. Getting out of a situation where you're being abused, but you also completely depend on a person at the same time is incredibly difficult. He knew I didn't have anyone I could stay with. He knew I didn't have any family willing to take me and my child in. He knew my only option was to be with him no matter how miserable I was, no matter what he did, until I could get my own place. And with this choice came the reality that I wouldn't be able to see or talk to Em again. I wouldn't be able to explain the situation, and he would go 20 years thinking that I just left him for dead and was living with my ex because I wanted to, not knowing the whole truth. but that's a story in itself and not part of the saga, so we'll end part 6 here.